Welcome to the monthly seminar organized by the Circular Economy Initiative at KTH and cooperation with the Catalyst project. You can learn more about the initiative and follow up on the seminars following the links. So today's seminar, we are very happy to host our colleagues from Food Agriculture Organization and Dr. Divine and Ms. Marta Gomez will introduce themselves in detail, but they do represent the workforce of Food and Agriculture Organization working with agro-industry and the biological cycle related to circular economy. Quite often here we talk about the manufacturing sector or design sector or energy sector and the role in transitioning towards more circular society. This time we are focusing on the biological part of biological cycle of circular economy, which is fundamental for the transition towards more circular societies. I give floor to Dr. Divine Njie and Ms. Marta Gomez. So please go ahead, introduce yourself, and we're very grateful that you could join us today.
Well, thank you very much. And it is my pleasure to join you in your seminar today, in your webinar. My name is Divine Njie. I work for the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, based at the headquarters in Rome. And I am the Deputy Director of FAO's Food Systems and Food Safety Division. So this is the division that serves global interests in terms of food safety and also supporting members on food systems related matters. So that would involve value chain development, food loss and waste reduction, industrialization, and things of that nature. So I am originally from Cameroon in Central Africa, and I have worked with FAO for now 16 years, based at the headquarters in Rome. So I would let my colleague Marta Gomez introduce herself, and then we can go ahead with our presentation for this afternoon. Marta, over to you.
Thank you very much, Divine. Can you hear me? Yes. To be sure. Thank you. I'm Marta Gomez. I work in FAO under another division, is the Climate Change, Environment and Biodiversity Division. And I work under the environmental work stream. I'm an agricultural engineer by training, and I've been working for the last 7 years on a project on bioeconomy, circular bioeconomy in FAO. In our division, we support the transition towards climate neutral or low carbon economies, environmentally friendly economies, so green economy, bioeconomy, and also biodiversity, with all the conventions behind. But I will talk more later about it.
Okay, good. Thank you, Marta. So, ladies, colleagues connected, I would like now to share my screen, and then I will present the first part of our talk, which is focused on the food loss and waste topic. And then Marta will come in with a more strategic look at the bioeconomy work that FAO carries out. So let me share my screen. Okay, so hopefully you can see the screen now.
Yes. Yes.
Good. Usually when I try to share, I usually have difficulties, especially when I change locations. Today I am working from home, and I am happy it worked. So we're going to give you an overview, an introduction of FAO for those that do not know FAO. So FAO is a specialized agency of the United Nations, and it is the agency that is mandated to work on all aspects related to food and agriculture writ large in this sense. So forestry, fisheries, natural resources, and to ensure food security across the humanitarian development continuum. That last dimension brings in the elements of emergency work, so in most cases where there are crises, we would also be called into play and work in collaboration with agencies like the World Food Program. So FAO is a member organization, so there are 194 member countries, member nations, but there is also one member organization, which is the European Union, and there are 2 associate members. So these are countries that want to participate but are not interested in being full-fledged members. So altogether, there are about 197 members. So the global goals of the organization are to eradicate hunger, insecurity, and malnutrition, to ensure sustainable management of natural resources, and the elimination of poverty and driving of economic and social progress. Now, these 3 goals are very, very important, and I would like you to consider them as interrelated. So they are not standing one separate from the other. So we are trying to promote economic development while ensuring that there is social progress. And in that respect, it then fits very, very well into the Sustainable Development Agenda. So you must have heard about the SDGs, and this mandate, therefore, helps us to deliver and contribute to supporting member countries in reaching their sustainable development goals. Now, so we work with what we call core functions. So there are 7 core functions. So if you look at everything we do, you can summarize them into these 7 areas. So the assembly of data and information. Now, we have the mandate to do that because of our neutrality. We collect data not for any ulterior motive, but to help countries. So that neutrality helps us in doing most of the work we are requested to support. The second thing we support is normative and standard setting instruments. And again, because we are a meeting place of nations, so nations come to our neutral platform to discuss and agree on standards and normative instruments. So you must have heard about the Codex Alimentarius, which is the global standard for food safety. So that is an example of a normative standard developed by FAO and the World Health Organization. Later on in the presentation, I will go into specific examples of how these core functions are linked to food loss and waste reduction and circular approaches. We also support policy dialogue at national, regional, and global level. And we support institutions to develop policies, programs, and leverage investments. And one very, very important area where we work is to facilitate partnerships and coalitions. As you can imagine, development cannot happen with one particular stakeholder group. All stakeholder groups have to work together. Partners have to work together in order to deliver. And so partnerships and the mobilization and the facilitation of partnerships is a very, very important area. And then we improve the uptake of knowledge, technologies, and good practices. And lastly, but not the least, is the advocacy and communication that we carry out. So these are the core functions of FAO, and they kind of determine how we work, no matter in what area, even if it is on food loss and waste, if it is on nutrition, the work can be summarized along these these 7 core functions. So this first part of my presentation will go now into a little bit more specific areas of intervention that are related to food loss and waste, and bringing out the circularity dimension in particular, which I understand is the interest for this group. So now the food loss and waste program of FAO, it is underpinned by the recognition that we are faced as a global community with huge problems related to food security, livelihoods, natural resources, environmental degradation, climate change, and so on. If you look at this graphic, for example, it shows you that food loss and waste actually contributes somewhere around, I think it's 5 or so, between somewhere around 6 or so gigatons of carbon emissions. And if food loss and waste were a country, the third bar, you would see food loss and waste would be the third emitter of greenhouse gases. So that is immense. Only the United States and China would be higher emitters than food loss and waste. So it's a very huge environmental problem. It costs hundreds of millions of US dollars. This against the backdrop where 800 plus million people in the world are undernourished and billions lack access to healthy diets. But we also know that food loss and waste has a very, very huge footprint on water and other scarce resources. These resources are used to produce food, but then the food ends up being wasted and lost. And of course, land is also one of those scarce resources. So this is kind of the backdrop against which we have conceptualized our work on food loss and waste and the adoption of circular approaches. So let us look at the program in a little bit more detail. So again, we take a systemic lens because we are looking at food loss and waste reduction, not as an end in itself, but as a means to an end. It is an action that is contributing to improving the performance of the entire food systems with a view to help countries achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. We also ensure that whatever we do complies with the triple bottom line of sustainability, economic, social, and environmental sustainability. And of course, we cover all sectors that are in FAO's mandate. So crop, livestock, forestry, whatever. Forestry might be surprising for some, but there are food products that arise from the forest. So we refer to them as non-wood forest products, and we definitely bring them into the fold of our interventions on food loss and waste reduction. Definitely, we take a circular approach in how we conceive our work because of the environmental dimensions that I had highlighted earlier. We prioritize the prevention of losses and waste, so taking measures to prevent losses from occurring in the first place, following which we then have measures like recovery, redistribution, rescuing of food, and redistributing to actors like food banks, and then recycling to and upcycling to products like animal feed and other value-added products. And if everything fails, we also ensure, because of the environmental implications, that the disposal of the remaining material is done in a responsible manner. Now, so there are 8 thematic areas to the work that we do, and these are in the blue boxes at the bottom there. So education and awareness raising, data, strategies, policies, capacity building and strengthening, normative instruments, value chain development, innovative technologies, and partnerships. You would recognize that these are already speaking to those core functions of the organization that I mentioned at the beginning. Now, these 8 kind of thematic areas are the areas in which we have our interventions, but we do respond and respect cross-cutting themes on gender, inclusion, and youth. We ensure that whatever we do is respectful of gender. It includes vulnerable communities. It empowers youth. We also have what we call accelerators. So technology, innovation, data, and complements, which includes institutions and other factors, are all accelerators of the work that we do. So when we have interventions on, for example, strategy development, we find ways of using those accelerators to move the work forward. At the end of the day, we want to contribute to 4 betters: better production, better nutrition, better environment, and better life, with a view to moving members towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. The work on food loss and waste is primarily considered to contribute to SDG 12 and SDG 2 and SDG 10, but by no means is it restricted to these 3. It contributes to industrialization, for example. It contributes to employment creation. It's another example. So because it is a food systems issue, it definitely contributes to all SDGs, all 17 SDGs. So I just wanted to now go into a little bit more specific discussion on these thematic areas. Now, if you look at the work on awareness raising and education, this, you would agree, is really the beginning, the core step. This is where we inculcate in young people, in school children, circular approaches, for example, recycling, and being very, very frugal with resources. So awareness raising is a very important dimension of the work. And one particular thing there is the International Day of Awareness, which, as shown on the slide, was established by a UN resolution, so by the UN Secretary General. And it was observed the first time in 2020. So we used those occasions to then raise the profile of the issue of food loss and waste, and then to muster interventions from different partners. There is a lot going on in this particular thematic area. So we do and we support, we work with many partners on awareness raising interventions. So for example, here I refer to this package, the Do Good Save Food package, which was designed for young people. There are also flyers and posters that were developed. And we have a whole lot of other interventions that we would not have the time to go into here. So apart from awareness raising, then the other thematic area that I mentioned is on data measurement and monitoring. Now, as you would imagine, this is very important. You cannot have an intervention on a problem without understanding what the problem is. So this area of work is very important. Because, like I mentioned earlier, we are a neutral platform. So we are a platform where people come and discuss and agree. So this is where we help in harmonizing the definitions and agreeing on methodologies. If we don't agree on methodologies, then we cannot make a headway on these circular approaches. On the slide there, I put two graphics where you see the way that we define losses. In one case, where losses are separate from the economic productive uses. That's on the left of your screen, and on the right hand side, you see where losses are captured and then fed into animal feed, and then supplied into animal feed. So the way you define these things is very important in then determining how you will go along with your circular strategies. The second bullet at the bottom there is talking about assessing the levels and causes. So we support different dimensions of this. So at the supply chain level, you need to understand what's happening, but also at national level, how much are we losing? How do we put this in the national strategies? So FAO is a custodian agency for SDG 12.3.1, which is the food loss index. The United Nations Environment Program is the custodian for the food waste index, which is SDG 12.3.1b. So the 12.3 has two indices, one for losses and one for waste. And we help countries in collecting this data. And the importance here, like I mentioned, is that this is what informs the interventions that we will be using, the circular approaches that countries and even supply chains will be using. So the other big intervention area is in policies. So these policies and strategies and regulatory frameworks have to be evidence-based. So the previous thematic area contributes to this and creates the base on which we develop these policies and strategies. I have mentioned the hierarchy of prioritization. The priority is given to prevention, and if prevention fails, then we look for ways to then either rescue, recover, redistribute, or then possibly recycling, incinerating, and disposal. So there is that hierarchy. And this definitely, as you can imagine, determines how you formulate the circular strategies. Now, these policies, we're working at subnational, national, regional, and global levels. Let me underscore, at subnational level, the one very big, important context that comes into play is at the urban level, for example, where urban food systems, you can imagine, are a key area for developing circular strategies. How do we dispose of the huge amounts of biological materials that need to be recycled at urban level, for example? So subnational strategies are very, very important. And then, of course, the regulatory frameworks. Now, the regulatory frameworks are also important. If you take, for example, date labeling. Date labeling is a key cause of food waste. And so how a particular country, legislates or sets regulations on date labeling of packaging of food is important and will eventually affect the circular approaches that are adopted, the volumes of material that you will be dealing with. Food safety and also feed safety. So food for human consumption and feed for animals. Now, if you're going to put back material in the system, and if it's going to end up on the table, you definitely must be thinking about the food safety regulations. And if it is intended for feed, naturally, you're also thinking of the feed safety dimension. So we do support a number of studies and the production of guidelines that inform different policies and strategies. And here I have 4 examples on the left. This study that looked at small and medium enterprises in Latin America, and then the second one on assessing discards from marine fisheries. The one on the top right-hand corner, the wholesale markets, very important again when you're looking at the urban and peri-urban context and the circular approaches that you put in place. On the right-hand side, there is this working paper that has been produced to provide a guideline for helping countries develop policies and strategies for food recovery and redistribution. So these are some of the examples, just the tip of the iceberg of the types of strategy, guidelines, and documents that FAO supports the preparation of. For capacity building, as you can imagine, is a big area of our work. So we are looking at human capacity building as well as institutional capacity building. We do have a big collection of guidelines and training materials, and we support training materials at different levels, at country level, but also at the global context. So here I just made a selection of some of the materials that are related to the horticultural sector, but this is by no means an exhaustive collection. So that's an example for capacity building material. Now here I have this example of what we are doing for capacity building related to the utilization of fish bycatch and discards processing wastes for then making silage, which is then used for animal feed and also for organic fertilizer. So here this is in the Caribbean. We're helping the countries build capacities of the supply chain actors, but also build their own institutional capacities to support these circular approaches. And I just have here some more dimensions of the capacity building work. There is the FAO e-learning academy, and within that we do have some of the modules looking at food loss and waste related topics. So in this particular case on the left, this is a training material on the SDG indicator 12.3.1, which is the indicator on the food loss index. And then on the right-hand side, this is training on the methodology for assessing losses. So using a case study approach. So the other big thematic area you would recall I mentioned is we help in setting a standard. So I mentioned, for example, food safety standards, and we do have the one in the center looks at the life cycle analysis, and as you know, that definitely is important for circular approaches. On the right-hand side, I show the code of conduct for the reduction of food loss and waste. And this is a product that was just recently developed. It was approved by the highest body of the governing body of the organization just last June. It was developed at the request of members, and it is looking at setting guidelines for the reduction of food loss and waste. A little bit up on the screen, I provide the rationale, as I mentioned before. Why is FAO suited for helping in developing these normative standards? If FAO were biased or favored particular stakeholders, it would not be an appropriate platform for such work. So FAO is a neutral organization. It is member country driven, but it is definitely neutral, and it then allows neutral negotiation and dialogue. We also have the technical expertise in the different areas that are required by these normative standards. Now, when you look at the Code of Conduct for Food Loss and Waste, there are specific articles within that Code of Conduct that are referring to a circular approach and providing guidance on how to approach food loss and waste reduction through a circular approach. This particular article is calling upon governments to put policy frameworks that help in the material hierarchy that I referred to, where priority is given to prevention, and then you need explicit mechanisms, incentives, and provisions for how you handle the rest of the material. It's not just something that has to be left for chance. It has to be designed and embedded in policies. What are the incentives to promote recovery and redistribution of food to food banks? How do we put policy incentives to, like I showed in the Latin America case, to incentivize the development of chains that will then add value to feed and develop activities in that direction. So this type of article then provides guidance for governments and they then can refer to their compliance with this code of conduct. So it's like a standard. You're complying to a standard, and it then brings all sorts of benefits in terms of market access or and other benefits that come with compliance with standards. This is another article, in this case, looking at stipulations for food supply chain actors themselves. What do they need to do? And you would see here, this particular one is actually espousing circular approaches, business practices that prevent food loss and waste from occurring. Packaging is a big issue, so they have to be careful how they use packaging, and the choice of the packaging material has to be appropriate, biodegradable, renewable is the way to go. So these are articles in the Code of Conduct that show and provide guidelines to which value chain actors can comply. So energy efficiency is mentioned in the last bullet. So this is another thematic area. I just used the particular case of reusable plastic crates as an example of a technology that we are promoting, and that definitely supports a circular approach. Now, this particular technology and all appropriate technologies from a circular perspective would be looking at helping to prevent loss of the material contained in the packaging or deterioration, but also allowing possibilities for recycling that material if the protective capacity is overcome. But then there is the third dimension of the circularity, which is the circularity of the packaging material itself. So, and this reusable crates, simple as they seem, have become a very, very, very important way of helping in these circular approaches. And very importantly, in this case, it also allows for compliance with safety requirements. These are easily washable, sanitized, and they then allow users to clean them before reusing them. And then the last thematic area that I have here is on collaboration and partnerships, a big area. And I just, as an example, have on the screen the technical platform on the reduction measurement of food loss and waste, which was set by a request from the G20 during the Turkish presidency in 2015. This was set in collaboration with IFPRI, and as you see there, it hosts, it carries immense quantities of technical materials and data on food loss and waste, and also hosts a platform for interaction by different stakeholders. So I am going to stop there, and then I will stop sharing, and then I will allow Marta to share her own presentation, and then go into part 2 and the final part of our presentation. Thank you, and I will stop sharing.
Thank you, Divine. Let me see.
So Marta, I see if you can put it in 10 or so minutes, that will be, so that we can allow for some questions.
Okay, perfect. Can you see my screen? Yes, okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, I will provide an overall picture of what we are doing in the project and program on bioeconomy, but the most important idea of my presentation that I want to convey is that bioeconomy, I will explain it now, but it's about economy based on natural resources, biological resources, biogenic resources. So it helps decarbonize, especially when reducing fossil fuels and replacing fossil fuels. But it also relies a lot on the use of residues, waste, and all the different biomasses that Divine has talked about, and also the old examples he provided, the use of for feed or other high value products. So a bioeconomy can be built on a circular economy, can be built on waste and residues and circular practices, recycling, reducing, etc. That's the most important message that I disclose now, but I will go over the presentation as fast as I can. First, just to say that in the Environment, Biodiversity and Climate Change Division, we look at the growing problems around the world, especially with regards to resource use, to the growing population, the inefficiencies, the huge amount of usable or organic waste that is going to landfills, sometimes up to 50% in some developing countries, the low added value and low innovation and technology that sometimes is out there, and the great ambitions by many countries to become net zero carbon by mid-century, but the little investments that are out there. So we look at solutions to try to support countries in develop policies, but also implement practices and technologies that will help meet this demand for food and non-food products with lower resources and more population in an equitable way and within the planetary boundaries. Within that, then there is the agri-food systems, which are the resource base. They are the ones who provide all the biomass, all the food, and other materials. When in FAO we talk about agri-food systems, we also refer to forestry and fisheries, and even microorganisms and other biological resources used in the system, right? So we are also seeing that this resource base is very inefficient, is very linear, is 1/3 of all emissions, 1/3 of the food that this produces is lost and wasted, like Divine said. 1/3 of the global population, the overall population, didn't have healthy diets, access to healthy diets in 2020. So there are huge challenges in the agri-food systems as well. So bioeconomy can provide many solutions, and also provide a framework for these solutions and moving towards a bioeconomy, a more greener and an economy based on biological resources rather than fossil fuels. So it's actually a framework that has been recognized by the scientific group of the UN Food Systems Summit that was held in September as a framework in which food and nutrition systems and food systems transformation should look at, especially also the role of biosciences in this transformation, innovations for this transformation, and how developing countries need to invest more. So just very briefly on the definition of bioeconomy, there are many strategies out there that I will talk now about, but and everyone has different definitions. So we don't focus that much on the definition itself, but just to show it briefly, the FAO uses the same definition as the International Advisory Council on Global Bioeconomy, and it starts by the production of biological resources, but also their utilization, conservation, and regeneration, to produce a wide range of products, processes, and services using knowledge, science, innovation, and technologies. And it's the most important thing is it's across all economic sectors. So it's a framework that unifies and coordinates. And then yes, it contributes to the transformation, to the transition to a more sustainable economy. So all these sectors, as Divine outlined with some examples, are food products, non-food products, feed, paper, textiles, chemicals, medicines, pharmaceuticals, plastics, packaging, energy, etc. So as I said, there are more than 60 countries and regions that have already a bioeconomy or bioscience strategy, but there are many more on the pipeline. Many of them, or the majority of them, have estimated the contribution of bioeconomy to the GDP, and it's around 10%, but they all have targets to improve or to move towards a higher percentage of the GDP, and therefore replacing their fossil fuels with biological resources more and more in the next decade. So just I put here some examples in the Nordic region and in Sweden. There is a Nordic bioeconomy program led by the Nordic Council of Ministers. There is also a Nordic Bioeconomy Council that follows on that bioeconomy program, and many satellite and different activities under that. That's at macro regional level. There is also the EU strategy, but also then at national level, there is Sweden created one in 2012, more based on the research and innovation side of things. So research and innovation strategy for the bio-based economy. That's the same pathway that the European Union and Germany and many other countries have followed. They first created research and innovation strategy, and then ministries of agriculture or other ministries created bioeconomy policy strategy, they call it. So it's more like on the implementation on the ground with the agri-food value chain actors and more systemic implementation. But they all started with, or the majority of them started with a research and innovation strategy. And then as a regional level, I know that I can pronounce it well properly, Secana region. It's also developing a strategy and many activities on the bioeconomy. There are many programs to support farmers, but also to support this transition and not only subsidies, but also other mechanisms like public-private partnerships and others. So here I put just two examples. One is a new European Circular Bioeconomy Fund by the European Investment Bank, and then the Circular Bio-based Europe Joint Undertaking, which is a public-private partnership at the European Commission level, together with the Bio-based Industries Consortium of Europe, which are doing so many projects and also going from the lab to the market, let's say. So yes, here is again the importance of the food for the bioeconomy, and just I will show in 1 minute a couple of examples on the 3 pillars of circular economy practices for the bioeconomy that can help in this transition to build an economy on waste and residues and keep the carbon as much as possible in the circle. First, it has to be in the 3 stages of the value chain, in the production, in the processing, and in the end of life. And yeah, so some examples could be to produce alternative proteins with insect feed on waste, or use biological and microbiome-based applications to reduce losses and support the health of plants and animals, use microalgae for wastewater treatment, restore soils, use orange peel to do bioplastics, and so on. So these are the circularity practices for the bioeconomy. I won't go into detail on the program because Divine has already talked about it, the 4 pillars. One program he already mentioned. There are 20 programs. One is the one that Divine has explained. Another one is a bioeconomy for food and agriculture. And we just focus on what I have said, support countries in developing strategies, but also implement practices, especially circular economy practices, to increase efficiency, reduce pollution, and add value, tap into the potential of biological resources. We focus only on one SDG, but the same as the program that Divine mentioned, we touch upon all the other SDGs. Ours is also 12, but focused on targets 2, 4, and 5, which is more on the pollution side of things, to reduce fossil fuels, but also polluting and harmful chemicals. I will share this presentation so you can see more in detail our theory of change, but it's to pass from a polluting and linear and unsustainable agri-food systems to a innovative, clean, and efficient bioeconomy with agri-food systems and resource base that supports it. Same examples again, or other examples, but I know you work on this, so you already know it for sure. And then just a snapshot of what we are doing. We coordinate an international working group on bioeconomy since 2015. We are developing strategies together with national governments, especially in Uruguay and Namibia, but also supporting, for example, the Eastern Africa strategy that was supported also by Sweden and many research institutes in Sweden, and then also the scale-up of technologies and practices. There are 24 criteria and 10 aspirational principles that this group that we lead have come up with, and that lead for the developing of a monitoring framework that the European Commission has used to develop theirs to monitor the progress towards sustainable bioeconomy. And there are 3 principles focused on circularity. I will share all these resources later so you can have a look. And these are just some examples on policies that we use. I already mentioned partnerships, incentives to research, but also supporting the consumer side of things and inclusiveness of the use of biomass. It's very important for FAO. And as a support we do to countries, I will post this link in the chat so you can see all our resources and knowledge products on monitoring, but also practices and policies for the bioeconomy. I will stop sharing now.
Thank you so much.